working our way through the book of Nehemiah, and we're calling this thing Leadership Brick by Brick because Nehemiah, man, what a leader. And his book is full of leadership principles, and we've talked about it already. How a leader prays, how a leader plans, how a leader promotes in order to motivate and mobilize his people. And today we're looking at how a leader organizes people to accomplish a project. So look at Nehemiah 3 if you would. If you turn to Nehemiah 3, real quickly, when you scan through the chapter, and I'm not going to have us read a bunch at the beginning, I'm going to have us look at it as we go through and I make my points. But it looks like just a bunch of Hebrew names. And that's why, it would not be fun if I started with David and said, David, would you read verse 1? And we went all the way around the room because we would all be frustrated with these Hebrew names in chapter 3. And so you know what a lot of commentators do? And preachers? They just skip this chapter. But I'm telling you, there's some great biblical wisdom to be found right here in chapter 3. In these principles really of how to organize people to accomplish a project, because that's what this chapter is about. It's about the people who did the work. I mean, Nehemiah was the leader, but he had to have people, right? You can't do anything unless you have a project like that, unless you got people to do it. And so you've got their names here that are listed. 2,500 years later, we're reading about these very people who and accomplished this amazing task of building this wall in 52 days. It was a miracle, really, when you think about it, because for 90 years it had lain in ruins since the last attempt that somebody had made to try to build this thing. So here's the first leadership lesson, and that is motivation without organization leads to frustration. You got to organize the people, right? You either organize or you agonize, as one of my preacher friends likes to say. And so you got to have some organization. And so I want us to look at 7 principles of successful organizing of people to accomplish a project. And the first is the principle of simplification. The principle of simplification. Keep it simple. If you're trying to put a project together, keep it simple. I mean, think about this task. It was enormous to build a wall around the city of Jerusalem. Maybe it was broken down. Remember, couldn't ride his mount through it. He had to get off his horse or camel or donkey, whatever it was. It was just a mess. So this was a massive project. And so Nehemiah had a very simple plan of organizing the project. He didn't assign any jobs by lottery, didn't create a whole new organization, didn't force any complex charts, didn't create a committee on committees. Sorry, do we have a committee on committees here? We probably do. Nominating committee on committees, and all these committees and everything. He didn't do any of that stuff. His plan was very simple, wasn't it? When you look at it. He basically organized this thing by groups that were naturally already together, which were mainly, groups that had affinity with one another, or even just families, right? That's the basic unit of organization, right? Is a family. So as you look at it, you got the priests in verse 1. You got the men of Jericho in verse 2. You got the sons of Hassenaah in verse 3. You got the men of Tekoa in verse 5. Those are natural groups already associated together. The point is, don't create organization that you don't need. Don't overdo it. Keep it simple. If there's already an organization, try to work through it and try to work with it. Sometimes a new leader comes into a situation, first thing he tries to do is to change the whole way everything is organized, and it just creates frustration for the people. So, no, he doesn't do that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's his motto here as he's trying to get these people to do this work. And so again, the most basic grouping or organization is the family. And in fact, look at how it is. We're skipping to the next chapter, and we're already jumping ahead, really another topic here, and that's opposition. But look at how he says, I stationed them by families. I stationed them by families. So, posted by families to build, to defend, to support. So, here's the leadership lesson. The strongest organizations are the simplest. Keep it simple. It's kind of like toys. Blocks are hard to break. But man, the toys they're making now with all those computer chips in them, it don't take much. It's like Pat and I learned a real valuable lesson when we bought a fancy washer and dryer. It had all these, settings and everything on them. And you know what happened after 2 years? The computer thing, the computer board went out in the thing. You know what the repair guy told me? A good friend from Grace Baptist Church I grew up with. Buy one that has a little dial that clicks around. He said the less parts that you got to mess with, computer stuff in it, the longer it will last. Simple is better, right? The same thing with these cars. Oh my goodness. You get that computer thing messed up in your car and then you're in a world of hurt. So simple is better. Simpler it is, the stronger it is. Simplest organizations are strong organizations. All right, here's the second principle, and that is the principle of participation. Simplification, keep it simple. Participation. And here it is. Work with those who want to work. Work with those who want to work. A lot of leaders never learn this. They spend all their time trying to herd the cats. They just spend all their time trying to fire up the frozen. They spend all their time trying to activate the apathetic instead of just running with the runners. The people who are already ready to roll, and are willing to work. Move with the movers. And so Nehemiah, he had a bunch of willing workers. For the most part, people got fired up. They heard his message. They heard his talk. They got his plan. They were motivated. They were ready to mobilize. They were ready to get this thing done. And nearly all available help was put to work. And the religious leaders led the way. Remember, we looked at it, verse 1. The high priest, Eliashib, and his fellow priests began rebuilding the sheep gate. They were the first ones out the gate, right? But then notice the variety of people who got involved in this thing. Verse 8, you got a goldsmith and a perfumer. And then in verse 14, you got a ruler. In verse 26, you got a servant. So you get the high and the low. You got the white collar and the blue collar. You got, and then there's a guy that's a guard. He's in law enforcement. Okay? You got all kinds of people from all different strata of society, people who were willing to work and to run. So nearly everybody was making mortar. Well, nearly everybody except one little group that's mentioned in verse 5, and we'll get to them here in a minute, but they were the kind of the hire it done crowd here. So there, in every project, there are two kinds of people. They're workers and shirkers. Right? And Nehemiah's response to the shirkers was just to ignore them. He didn't spend all of his time trying to fuss at them and get after them and try to motivate these people to do what they needed to do. He just went with the people who were willing to work. Put them to work. It worked out pretty good for him too, didn't it? So work with the people who want to work. I had to learn this lesson the hard way. When we'd have a work day at one of the churches that I pastored or planned a project, it seemed like I had more disappointment for the people that didn't show up for it than I had joy and gratitude for the people who did show up. I had to learn that the hard way. I just got to tell you, I always, Pat's the optimist and I'm the pessimist. I'm the half, half empty and half full. Yeah, I'm the one and she's the other. We make a great combination together that way. But I was always, just mad about where's so-and-so? Where are they? This and that. And get aggravated about the people that didn't show when I should have been happy and grateful for the movers who were moving, the ones who were willing to work. And so that's kind of what, what Nehemiah does here. And I, God finally had to show me, hey, get excited about the people who do come, those who want to work, and forget the other people. It's their loss. They're the ones who are going to miss out on the blessing, and just forget it and just keep moving with the movers. So now leaders love everybody, but move with the movers. In every organization, family, and church where there's some people who say, I want to help, I want to be involved, what can I do? Focus on those people. Right? Don't focus on the people who make excuses. All right, the principle of participation. All right, let me move on to the principle of delegation. when you organize specific assignments, you need to divide it up into specific tasks and assign specific people to those specific tasks. That's one thing that I've been at FRC, Family Research Council, for 13 years, and in the early years we kind of struggled with that because our boss would have a great idea, but no one got assigned to it as the person responsible for it. You got to get to the place where you got a task that needs to be done, but it has to be assigned so that somebody is responsible and accountable to do it. So what if, let's just say, what if after Nehemiah's pep rally, in the rubble with the people, when he got everybody excited and fired up, and they jumped up ready to go build that wall, what did we say? Okay, just go work wherever you want to work. Well, chaos, exactly. I mean, it wouldn't work out if it was just straight up chaos. That wouldn't have worked. Or what if he said, hey, everybody, let's go and let's just focus on one gate. Everybody in the whole work group, let's just go focus on that one gate and build that one gate, then we'll all go and move to the second part of the wall. What would have happened? They'd have been climbing over each other, right? I mean, you can't do that either. You got to make specific assignments, okay? So a key word in this passage, I think, is you'll see it on the screen there, is section. You see that? It's in italics in those 3 verses there. And I just pulled 3 verses out of the chapter, and those 3 verses section, and to another section, and to another section. 3 times you've got it in that passage. But honestly, when you look at this chapter, you've got it 13 times reference. So what are we saying then? If we're looking at a specific section with specific people who are doing that work, we're looking at delegation. We're looking at assignments, aren't we? Right? And so that's exactly what's happening here. By the way, the only mention of American politics in the Bible is in verse 26, where it speaks of the assignment of the Watergate. Anyway, just kidding. Just kidding. But notice, Nehemiah has these people organized by delegating these groups to sections of the wall. So obviously he thought this out. Remember when he went on his midnight ride? It wasn't Paul Revere's, but his. And he goes around, he looks at the city, and he's thinking, okay, I need this many stonemasons and this many woodworkers, and I need this many people mixing mortar, and I've got I've got this section, this section, this section. He thought this thing out. Did it out, right? That's what he did, and that's a mark of good leadership. Now let me give you just a couple of things here as you look at it. I don't know if you can see it real well. It's kind of small. If it's small on my screen, it probably is there too. But what you maybe can't see is that you've got these. Here are the names, either names or categories of people. Men of Jericho. You got the goldsmiths and the merchants, and essentially what you've got are the assignments that he made to the sections of the wall. You see it? It's kind of hard to see, and I'm sorry for that. But you got the gates there that have these parallel lines that intersect the wall, and then you've got the people who are assigned all the way around that wall. So that's how he kind of did it, and he kind of did it when he's describing it here, he's doing it in a counterclockwise fashion. He's going around in a counterclockwise fashion and describing who and what section. Right? And he goes all the way around this thing. All right, so let's talk about some tasks involved in delegation. First of all, break down the big goals into smaller tasks. And that's this is the capacity to cut down a big problem into size here. And Nehemiah attacks this major problem of building this massive wall by breaking it down into bite-sized pieces, these sections that you saw up there on that map. I remember when I was pastor at Buffalo Trail, and we were trying to do something that a good dear friend of mine, David Wheeler, he's a professor of evangelism up at Liberty Seminary, And he had this idea that he got from a guy that's not Southern Baptist, kind of off-the-wall charismatic, but the principles were biblical. He called it servant evangelism. It's basically doing deeds of kindness in the name of Jesus as a way to prepare the soil, prepare the heart for the full gospel presentation. So we had all kinds of things in mind to do, like a free car wash where we didn't charge. We're not trying to raise money for a youth trip or whatever, and people would be blown away, like, why are you doing this? Well, we're doing it free because it's free, like the grace of God. It would be an opportunity then to share a little gospel message with people. We went to the soccer fields and we handed out water bottles that had a label on it that had our church information on there. We had a little booth out at the soccer fields, and we were handing out water in the hot sun, coming out of an ice cooler, and families were just flocking, to our little tent there, little pop-up, to get the water, and we got a chance to share the gospel with them. Upwards basketball, we were handing out stuff there. I mean, all kinds of projects. But when we thought about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is big. I mean, how are we going to do this? And so, we had people who were, when we were doing door-to-door stuff, we had one guy that was in charge. His name's Otis Miller. I don't know if anybody knows Otis Miller. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about too. It was so funny when I went to that church. That everybody told me that deacon right there is going to give you more trouble than anybody in the church. He's crotchety. He's this and that. And the funny thing was, once I understood him and where he was coming from and what made him tick and what he was passionate about, he became my leading cheerleader. He was the man. I mean, he was my guy that organized the street assignments for the whole group. I mean, he was fired up. He became one of my best advocates in the church. And I was like, you guys don't know what you're talking about. He's awesome. But anyway, he was my guy that was laying out the street assignments. And then we had people who packed the bags that were hanging, the door hangers that were putting on the door. We had people that prepped the door hangers, slapped labels on the water bottles, and on and on. We had people that just bite-sized little tasks we gave to groups that wanted to do that. Some people said, well, I don't know if I want to talk to people. Okay, well, you can help me make a bag up, right? So that the group that will talk to people can hand it out. So we had these little, tasks that we laid out. So we had the street teams going out, the soccer fields going out in the summertime, the car washing teams that were there at the church. Everybody had a specific task. And it was divided up and delegated out to people who were willing to work. They'd show up and say, well, what can I do? Well, we have this task, we have that task, we have the other task. And people would pick what they wanted to do. And it was amazing what God did. I mean, the church literally doubled in size as a result of this outreach effort that was going on. It was a massive effort, but the way we were able to accomplish it was get down to the bite-sized task. Right? And that's what Nehemiah was doing. So break it down, develop a clear job description. Everybody deserves to know what's expected of them, right? And then match the right person with the right task. And the way that we tackled this one was that we went through the teaching of spiritual gifts. That was the first thing we did. We went through biblical teaching on spiritual gifts, and we did a spiritual gifts inventory in which people identified their 3 top spiritual gifts after taking that little test. Okay? Then, secondly, we did a ministry fair. And Martha, you know all about that because you've done that here at this church. You've kind of been one of the leaders, architects of that here. But what we did at our church was a little bit different. We had the ministry fair that showcased these various ministries, but each ministry had tagged to it a set of jobs and tasks. And with those jobs and tasks, those little bite-sized things, right, there were a list of gift sets that were best suited to that task in that ministry. And so they had their inventory. They saw their gift set, right? And then they were going to the booths and they were hearing, okay, what's this ministry about? And then they were looking at the task list and they were looking at the gift sets saying, hey, mine matches up with that. I'm kind of interested in this, right? I'm interested in missions education or whatever, because I've got a heart for evangelism and missions, and that's part of my gift set or whatever. And so people would sign up for those ministries that matched up with their gifting. So you match the right person with the right task. And nothing's worse than putting somebody in a place that they have no passion for and no gifting for, right? I mean, a lot of people are willing to do stuff, do anything, but it's best if you can match them up with where their gifting is and where their passion and interest is. So, in the secular world, people take all kinds of personality tests. So what are some of them that y'all have taken? I've got several I can list, but maybe you can give me some that you do.
Briggs.
Yep. Myers-Briggs. Yep. Any others you can think of? How about DISC? You ever do DISC? No? All right. Any others that y'all do? There's a bunch of them that people do to figure out where they are, as far as their interest and their passions go. But you got to put the right people in the right place. Now I'm going to give you Jim Collins. He's got, management guru. He's wrote a book, Good to Great, and all the, management people love this guy, Jim Collins. And I don't agree with everything he says. He says, get the right people, then determine the destination. You can't do that as a church. Jesus has already set the destination, okay? We have a Great Commission. The destination's set. This guy says, get the right people, then you figure out where you're going to go. We know where we're going to go. Okay, church knows where it needs to go, right? So I totally disagree with Mr. Management Guru on that. But I do agree with him on what's on the screen. And that is, basically gives this metaphor of being a bus driver, right? He says, the bus, your company's a standstill. It's your job to get it going. You got to decide where you're going. No, you don't. We already know that. How are you going to get there, and who's going with you? Now that you do need to know. In fact, leaders of companies that go from good to great start by getting the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. Now for sure, in a church, that doesn't exactly apply. You want to get as many people on the bus as you can, right? But what we do want to do is get people in the right seat. Get them hooked up with the right task and right mission, right? So that does apply. So, think about it. Everybody's responsibility is nobody's responsibility, right? You got to make an assignment. You got to get an assigned task. Somebody's got to assume specific responsibility. You got to get the right people in the right seat on your bus if you're going to reach your desired destination. So, let's look at the fourth principle, and that is the principle of motivation. And we looked at that last week, but in organizing a project, you got to find ways to encourage ownership in a job, in a task. Help people feel like it's theirs. There's investment, personal investment in it, right? They got to feel like it's their project. And Nehemiah did this. Notice how he assigned these sections. Look at it. The motivation's natural here. Look at it. What do you see here? What's the motivation for building the wall?
Protect your own home.
At home, right? Right there across from my house is the wall. Now, what kind of job are you going to do? Maybe, if I flash that sign back up of the slide of the wall, and you're, 5 miles away from home, is your motivation going to be as great at the fish gate as maybe it would be if you lived right next to the sheep gate? Probably not. Notice how he assigned people the task next to where they live. And there's several good, smart, just country boy simple stuff about that. One is they don't have to go far, right? You can work and then go home and eat lunch and come right back to work, and you don't spend any time traveling or anything like that. And it's where you live. You want that part of the wall to be strong, right? Because you want to keep your family safe. That is a tremendous motivation. So he knew how to motivate his people, and that was a great way to do it. So when you put a project together, let people do what they have the most interest and passion in, what they're invested in, where they would most likely, where would you most likely want to build the wall? You'd want to build it by your house. And what's the result of when you allow ownership in a project? High motivation, I think. High motivation. And if I'm building a part of the wall that's going to protect my house, I'm going to do a good job, I think, in this case. Now, again, notice back up there, this leadership lesson here, that good organizations allow people to develop their own areas. And certainly, back up in verse 1, I don't have it on the screen, but in verse 1, who was building? Who was building in verse 1? Out the gate. The high priest. Yeah, and remember what the sheep gate? Yeah, the sheep were coming in the sheep gate to go to slaughter for the sacrifices. Little bit of vested interest there in the high priest to get that part right, because that's where he worked. That was his full-time job. That's what he was about. It was his ministry. So great motivation to do that. So streamline the process so that people can feel like, man, they got ownership of it, rather than tying them up in committees before allowing them to get started. If you're a member, you got an idea, you got the gift, you got the interest, then you're it. Go for it, right? I know there has to be permissions done and everything, but allow for ownership as much as possible and streamline the process. But good organizations allow people to develop their own areas, especially according to their passion and their gifting and calling and ministry. All right, then the principle of cooperation. And notice there's a key phrase used, and it's used a bunch, I think, in this passage. Beside him, next to them. There's an association here, right? Whenever you got a project of any size, you got to organize, you got to realize that we accomplish so much more together than we do as individuals. And so there's an association going on here, cooperation that's going on next to him, beside him. They must have helped and encouraged each other. Remember Forbes magazine? There was a guy by the name B.C. Forbes that founded that years ago. He said, you spell success T-E-A-M-W-O-R-K. Cooperate together. You got to work together. The cooperation is a key principle that's built into any good organization. Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is the progress. Thinking together is unity. Working together is part. You've heard this. I think the pastor even talked about this recently. That geese, and I guess we'll see them soon coming back. But you see them flying in that V. Right? And you remember the statistic, easy for me to say, a goose by itself can't fly as far as geese in that V formation. 72% they fly further in the V than by themselves. And so God's built that and hardwired that into the DNA of birds, geese. And he's also built that as a principle of leadership, I think, that they absolutely do. That's a good point. That the back one will rotate to the front, and when the front one gets tired because he's taking the brunt of it, then they go back, right, and they flip around. And
the front one drifts back to the back.
Okay, all right. Front one drifts back to the back, and then they rotate up. Right, yeah. Okay, that's how it works. Gotcha. So yeah, I'm glad you got me straight on. But yeah, you see the principle though. They cooperate, they work together as a team. God put that into them, hardwired into them. So that's a good principle, and we know that from Scripture. Two are better than one because they've got a good reward for their efforts. For if either fails, his companion can lift him up, but pity the one who falls without another to lift him up. So when you're building an organization, a business, a church, lay ministry, keep it simple. Work with those who want to work. Make specific assignments. Delegate. Allow for ownership. And encourage teamwork, cooperation. So good organizations provide a supportive climate of trust and teamwork. That's a mark of a good organization. All right, so in the Bible, when Christians, referring to Christians in the church, there's a phrase that's used a lot, and that is one another, right? 58 times. It's as if God's saying, get the message here. Help each other. There's no such thing as Lone Ranger Christians. We need each other. And certainly that's true in the church. We're a team. There's tremendous power in cooperation. God can overlook a lot of things in the church. A lack of, facilities, lack of big money. I mean, they didn't have any in the book of Acts. But what they did have was they were all in a Honda. One accord, right? right? And they were unified. They were one heart, one accord, one heart, and unified. 10 times the Bible says that in the book of Acts. And when you have unification like they did in the book of Acts, you'll have the power that the early church had in the book of Acts. So there's power in teamwork, working together in this kind of atmosphere of trust and teamwork. Snow, we were talking about snow this week, and Ed, God bless you, you got 4 or 5 inches out there in Cosby. Pat was praying for your snow, but she didn't get it. It just shows that you're closer to the Lord than she is, right? Because you got it, she didn't. But anyway, snow is a beautiful demonstration of what God can do with a bunch of flakes, right? I mean, if you think about it. I mean, individually I can't do a lot, you can't do a lot, but snowflakes, they're pretty frail, but when you pile them up, they can stop traffic. When they get together, man, things happen. And when we were out in Wyoming, we couldn't go anywhere. And it was wonderful sitting in front of a fire and watching it fall. But you get the point. Together you could do a whole lot more and make an impact, a bigger impact. That's teamwork. All right, let's go to the next one, and that is the principle of administration. The principle of administration. And this principle is implied all the way through this passage. And that is, you got to supervise the work to get the job done. You can't just turn people loose and just hope and wish for the best, right? You kind of have to look over the shoulder a little bit, right? And you see that here, don't you? Now, we're going to keep. I'm going to keep pounding on these men of Tekoa here. A little bit later, I'll hit them hard again. But verse 5, notice though that they did have, in the italics, what did they have? They had supervisors, not stupidizers, but they had supervisors, right? The nobles were the stupidizers. But anyway, next to him, the Levites made repairs under Rehum. And verse 18, after him, their fellow Levites made repairs under Benui. I hope I said those names right. I have no clue. We'll have to ask Pastor Dean when he gets back from Israel. But you get the point. I mean, they were appointed supervisors who were helping manage and supervise and administer the work to make sure that the project was moving forward. They were holding people accountable. And so there are 2 leadership laws that we need to understand here on this one. That is, here's the first one. Good organizations establish clear lines of authority and supervision. Remember I was telling you earlier, in the early days of FRC, and Tony's done a great job of, hey, let's go around the table here and figure out who is going to take this project and be the one to administer it. He knows now that's the key to getting things done. With our ministry is we've got to have somebody who's in charge and who's going to see to it that the task gets done. So you got to have some clear job descriptions, clear lines of authority. And then here's another one. I love this one. This is Pastor Rick Warren. It's not mine, it's his. People do what you inspect, not what you expect. That's a pretty good one, isn't it? People do what you inspect, not what you expect. If you just hope for the best, probably ain't going to happen. But if you inspect it, if you watch, if you're looking over the shoulder, if you're asking questions, if you're asking for reports, that's one thing that I learned early on as a supervisor. If I'm not having an accountability meeting with the people who are working for me, and the last church I served, we had 1,500 in worship, a little bit bigger than this church now. We had about 45 or so people that were on staff, and I had to have regular meetings with people, because if I didn't, then I didn't know. I mean, if somebody came and asked me about what was going on in a ministry and I hadn't been meeting with the leader of that ministry, I wouldn't know what to say. And I wanted to make sure that I had with those people and what they were doing. So you got to inspect and not just hope for the best. So those of you who are bosses and supervisors, you figured that out yet? I'd learned that one the hard way.
My kids ask me in class, they ask me when I give them a worksheet, the first thing they say, is this for a grade?
Everything's for a grade.
Even when they're grading is much better than what.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If they know there's an expectation behind it and they're going to be inspected for it, yeah, you got it. So it's interesting, though, as you look at this chapter, and I challenge you to read it if you can make your way through it. But there's one person's name that's missing. Now, there is a duplicate name here that's not the guy I'm talking about. But whose name is missing? There's somebody with the same name here. It's not him, but the lead dog. Nehemiah is not in here. Now, there is a Nehemiah in here again, but it's not this guy, okay? He's not in here. But do you not think he's supervising? Oh, you better believe he is. How do we know that he's supervising? How do we know? How do we know? Because he's got such a detailed record with everybody's names and the section that he assigned them. And so we know he's supervising the whole project. And here's a good management maxim, if you will, from Tom Peters, his book, Passion for Excellence. He refers to MBWA, management by walking around. Any of you, supervise other people, you understand that? If you spend all your time in the office and you never get out there where people are, management by walking around. You've got to know what your people are doing, and to know what people are doing, you got to walk around. You got to be where they are. You got to be where they're doing their jobs, right? So, with the youth guy, I had to be, and he's running the Upwards basketball program, then I would drift over to Upwards basketball, even if my kid wasn't playing, which typically they were. Will never scored a basket, by the way. He never hit one basket the whole time he played Upward basketball. But he was a demon when it came to defense, though. He was amazing, blocking all the shots and everything, because he was always a head taller than all the other kids. But yeah, I was walking over there just to see what was going on. That's going to be on video, isn't it? Yeah. Will's going to be mad at me. But he didn't hit one shot. But man, he was the best shot blocker that ever played Upward basketball. He was amazing. Anyway, all right, just for the record, son, I love you. You're awesome. But I would drift over there and see what was going on and how the youth guy was running that program to make sure that when I had a complaint come in, which invariably we always did, from a parent in Upward basketball, I would know what was happening. I knew for myself. I mean, I could ask him, but I also knew because I was walking around. So he's, Nehemiah's walking around, he's checking up on people, finding out what's going on. And how did he know, which part each person or group built? Because he was continually inspecting, he was supervising. It's the principle of administration. All right, lastly, and that is the principle of appreciation. The principle of appreciation. And this is one, I think, that a lot of people who are supervisors need to up their game on. because that's something that I have experienced in my lifetime where that could have been done better. I've been a supervisor and I've been supervised. Started work when I officially could in the state of Tennessee at age 16. I worked for, sucker and tobacco from a kid, but at 16, the day I turned 16, I was under a supervisor. And I thrived under a supervisor who expressed appreciation for the job that I did. I didn't quite do as well for supervisors, and this is when I was young and immature and didn't, wasn't looking at it from a spiritual perspective, which I'll give you at the end. I didn't do quite as well in the flesh with a supervisor who never said anything positive. The supervisor would point out when you did something wrong, though. They were always, that guy was really good at that. He was get all over you, hardtail, just wear you out, verbally abusive and all that, especially football coaches, right? Can y'all identify with that? I never heard language like that came out of a man's mouth until I was playing football. But anyway.
It's worse in the Army, believe me.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Training.
Right.
Real sergeants, they just let it go.
Yeah, they do. They do. But in a normal context, not in that, not in boot camp, but in a normal context, you're hopeful that a supervisor is going to express appreciation. And the way that he does that in this chapter is that 2,500 years later, we're reading about these people that we can't pronounce their names. All right, but they're here. And when you look at this chapter, I kind of compare it to the faith chapter in the book of Hebrews, the hall of faith. Well, this is the role of workers, right? And he is rolling through with all these people who did this amazing work in 52 days. This is kind of his way of expressing appreciation. There are 38 individual names here that he basically says, hey, you did a good job. You helped us complete this task. And my question I want to ask those of you who are in any kind of leadership or supervisor or management position is this: do you know who's doing a good job? Who works for you? Do you know who's doing a good job? And if you do, are you telling them? People starve for positive affirmation when they're giving their lives to something and they're putting their all in something, right? I mean, there are 5 love languages, and Pastor's doing this awesome series on marriage, and I can't remember the guy that wrote the book. Y'all have to remind me. Gary Smalley, there you go. Thank you very much. 5 love languages, and my number 1 is words of affirmation, right? Pat's is deeds of service. If you don't know what your mate's love language is, you need to go home and figure that out right now. You can leave early if you want to, because that's very important, all right? But words of affirmation are not just a love language that's the most important, to me, but it's important to everybody. It's important to get a, hey, great job. Thanks for doing that. That was an amazing song you sung, Tim, or whatever. I mean, it's wonderful to get a word of affirmation from your boss. And, at FRC, when we would recognize people, we used to do something called the Servant Leadership Award. It was a bronze statue of Jesus washing the feet of Peter. Big meeting, we'd have all the staff would come in, and we would make a presentation to the person who showed exemplary service during that month, and we would hand them this bronze statue, and they got to keep it for a month, and then it was given to somebody else in the organization. That was a great motivator because it was expressing appreciation. I mentioned Pastor Rick Warren, Saddleback Church. He's a Southern Baptist, I guess loosely, but he is. But when he was in Israel one time, he came up with what he called the Giant Killer Award. I was just thinking about that because I know Dean's there now. I should ask him to go pick me up some. But when we were at the Brook Kidron, when I was in the Holy Land, I picked up a bunch of those smooth stones. The Brook Kidron, does that make any sense for anybody? 1 Samuel 17, a big tall guy, a little short boy, slingshot. Okay. The Brook Kidron is where he got those 5 smooth stones. And so Rick Warren got 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and rather than ask him for permission, he just put them in his bag and brought them back, which I don't think you're supposed to do. And if you leave Tel Aviv airport with those in your bag, you could be strip searched. I don't know, but he wasn't. He made it back home, and he also had bought a little slingshot from a boy on the street in Bethany, and he made a big window box, or what do you call those? Shadow box. Yeah, with 5 stones in the slingshot, and he called it the Giant Killer Award. He put this little inscription on it, am I gazing at Goliath or looking at the living God? And every month he would hand this award out to the person in the church who was exemplifying the giant killer in their midst. He was taking on a big project, or she was taking on a big project and showing the work of excellence and everything, and tackled the greatest problem of the month. It doesn't mean that they solved it, it means they took it on. But yeah.
Why 5 stones?
Because he had 4 other brothers, right? He's going to take them all out. He knew the one was going to take out Goliath, but he had 4 other brothers he was going to get. So it's important to develop ways to let people know that they're doing a good job. And that's why verse 20 is so key. Do you see it up on the screen? Look at what he adds here. This is the only one in the whole list of 38 names that he adds a description to. He adds an adverb. Adverb? Adjective. Adverb to. Sorry, my English is... I made a B in English when I was in high school. Sorry, Miss Johnson. Anyway, you remember, don't you? You were in my class. You remember me throwing up because I couldn't do an oral book report. Anyway... but notice that it says he did his job diligently, which is a really interesting word in the Hebrew. It's kara, or kawa, really. That's how you say it. It means literally to glow, to burn, and it can mean zealously. It can mean enthusiastically. That's the only descriptive term applied to their work in the entire chapter. Now, some people did their work. Some people didn't do any work. Remember those guys that didn't lift a finger? We'll visit them in a minute. But
grandmother died 3 times.
Oh gosh, I'm getting called out for sure today. I didn't want to do that oral book report so bad, and I think I've told y'all badly. Sorry, that I've told y'all that I actually got my own sweet sainted grandmother to write a note that she had died, so that I could get out of the oral book report in the class I was with Martha in, Miss Johnson's class. But anyway, yeah.
Sorry.
And Scott, by the way, we would get Papa's truck keys and the boat, and when the crappie were biting, my mama wrote a note. And we were off to catch a bunch of crappie. But anyway, I have completely gone squirrel on this one. Thank you so much, Martha. But anyway, here we are 2,500 years later. We're reading about this guy who was zealously, enthusiastically, diligently throwing himself in the work on this wall. And we're reading about him, all these, I don't know what he did. Maybe he did it extra fast. Maybe he did it extra well. Maybe he worked extra long hours. Maybe he did it with a positive attitude. Maybe it was just the excellence with which he did it. But he's recognized for doing such a great job. And God loves people who are zealous in the work. I mean, it's in the Bible. Think about it. Phineas, Numbers 25. Remember, we went through this passage when we were studying the life of Moses. And remember Zimri, Cosby, they were hooked up, and the idol-worshiping Moabite woman comes in and seduces this Israelite man, And Phineas the priest comes in and he says, we're going to put a stop to that, and puts a spear through both of them at the same time. And God says, you know what? That's my man right there. That's my man. And because of his zeal, I won't kill them all. Because God sent a plague and wiped out part of them, but he didn't kill them all. He didn't destroy them all. And he said that forever Phineas is going to be remembered for his zeal. And then Jesus, I mean, when he cleared the temple, remember what the disciples remembered about him when they recalled the Psalm 69:9, zeal for your house will consume me, there in John 2:17. They thought about that. So zeal is something that's very important to God. In fact, enthusiasm is a word based on a Greek word, in theos. So God possessed, if you will. So when you're possessed by God, you're going to be enthusiastic about your work for the Lord. And then here's one other point, and I got to go quick because we're done. And that's essentially that there were women working too. There were ladies. One guy had his daughters out there. Now I don't know if he didn't have any sons; he only had daughters. I'm not sure. But you know, typically in those days, women weren't doing wheelbarrows and loads of bricks and mortar, but here these ladies were, and he recognizes them. Credit to whom credit is due. He's not a chauvinist. He said these girls are doing a good job. Points them out for special recognition here. Now it could be Shallum didn't have any sons. He only had daughters. He put them to work. But if you think about it, he's probably a pretty smart man. He got all the help he wanted from all the guys all around, because here's his daughters doing the work on the wall. Next door, oh, I'll help you lift that. Oh, I'll help you, shovel up some of that mortar. Smart dude. So appreciation, he's giving recognition, and I think that's a part of the purpose of the chapter with all these names. But then you got these sorry guys, who wouldn't lift a finger to help. And 2,500 years later, we're reading about them too. And in every church, about 20% do 80%. Am I right? I mean, really, it pretty much holds true. I really believe that. And here these guys are, they're listed in this book because they didn't lift a finger to help do the job. And it's that way now. But good organizations recognize and reward enthusiastic effort and excellence. And, and as I was reading this, I think about how Nehemiah sat down and wrote his list of people that he appreciated his work. If Pastor Dean were to do that for this church, would your name make the list? I paused for reflection on that. Would your name make the list if he were writing it down? So, he may not know what you're doing, but here's the point. God does. He may not put your name on the list, but God knows what you're doing. Let me give you a couple of verses here as we quit, because we got to go into church. But basic, we're going to give an account, right? Jesus told a parable about it, and so what should we do? We should give everything we got to the work of the Lord, because it's not in vain. I mean, I used to have a perspective when I had a supervisor that I'd get aggravated and I might not do as good a job. But as I've gotten older and gotten a little bit more mature in the faith, I'm not there yet. I'm like Paul, I'm still striving to reach the goal of the high calling of God in Christ Jesus. But what I'm realizing at this stage of my life, I'm not doing it for that guy. I mean, I love him, but I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for somebody else, right? And we all have got to take our place on the wall in this situation. And, that's the key to success, is that it's in direct proportion to how many people actually get their hand on the work that's happening on that wall, right? And I don't have time to explain that missionary to South Africa, but this is one of my life verses now. It used to be Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and it still is, but this one is really becoming my life verse. Whatever you do it from the heart as something for the Lord and not for the stupidizer. I mean supervisor. You know, knowing that you'll receive the reward of an inheritance from the Lord. You serve the Lord Christ. Ought to be our motivation to do our best, like that dude that was pointed out for his diligence, right? Diligently, zealously, enthusiastically. That's the way we ought to go about everything that we do for the Lord. Amen? Amen. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this chapter that is so hard because we can't read it, at least not out loud and not make a fool out of ourselves and do it. But Lord, we're grateful for what it represents. And what it represents are real people who took a job at their place around that wall, and together, under the leadership of Nehemiah, they did something amazing with your help. They built a wall in 52 days. It's amazing what they were able to do together. And God, I pray that you would help us to see this church and the ministries of this church as a wall that's down, that need to be built. And we all have a place. We all have a part. We all have passion about what we are interested in. We all have gifts that you've given us that are unique to us, that you've given us to be deployed for ministry in the church. So God, help us to see that place at the wall, on the wall, that's ours, where we need to be, and link arms with others who are also at that place on the wall. And God, help us to put our hand to the work and not be like the nobles of Tekoa who didn't lift a finger. But Lord, not only do the work, but do it diligently and zealously and enthusiastically, because we know at the end of the day we're not doing it for a supervisor. We're doing it for the Savior. And we pray, Lord, that one day that He would say to us, well done. Well done. God, help us to think about that this week as we consider where to put our energies and passion in this church at our place on the wall. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Have a great week this week.